Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all well. My only advice to everyone is don't ever not look down, and if you see acorns, walk away.
It's like marbles.
So it's like marbles. I'd first like to call the roll, starting with John.
John Zazzo.
Rory Latzman.
Richard Kessel.
Chris Wright.
Charo Esdran.
Okay, so we do have a quorum. First item is approval of the minutes of the Board of Directors meeting from September 24th, 2024. First, do I hear?
Made.
Okay, and I'll second it. Is there any changes to the minutes or corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next, we have the consideration of a county contract for H2M architects, engineers, land surveying, and landscape architecture, DPC. Martha, would you give us a summary?
Sure. Item 505-24, the contract is with H2M and is with the Department of Public Works. The vendor was selected through an open competitive bidding process. The county anticipates funding the contract with capital proceeds. Approval of this contract does not guarantee future borrowing authorization. The term of the contract is 5 years from the notice to proceed with a 1-year renewal option. The contract is valued at $11.5 million. The funding includes the 1-year renewal option. The vendor will provide program management services to assist the Department of Public Works implement a rehabilitation program for the county sanitary sewer collection system.
Question, Mr. Chairman, on Bay Park or Cedar Creek or?
The whole system.
The whole system, okay.
I just want to ask you, Martha, I know you mentioned the value was about $11 million.
$11.5 million.
11.5, I mean, are you comfortable, or if you just don't mind, that's a lot of money for this work. Are you comfortable in the value that you're
Ken.
getting from
Yes.
who you've chosen?
Yes.
Okay.
Moved.
Are there any other questions? No. Seeing none,
I'll move it.
moved by Chris. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by John Zasso. Anyone from the public want to address it? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 I just do want to disclose that I'm president of the Great Neck Library, and we use H2M. I'm advised that there's no conflict. I don't need to recuse myself, but ought to put it on the record that there is that, I wouldn't even use the word connection, but there's that. With that, I vote aye.
So noted. Thank you, Martha. Next is adopting the staff report concerning the multi-year plan of Nassau County, years 2025 through 2028, and the recommendations contained therein. I have a few comments on it, and then Evan is going to make a presentation. Just so you know, Evan is not feeling well, so he's on the phone. He's going to make a presentation, and the directors are certainly entitled to ask him questions or make comments, etc. I think it's important to note to the board, and I've told them this individually, is that we are not voting on the county budget tonight. We are only voting to adopt the staff report. We will not vote on the budget until after the county legislature approves the budget, and whether or not they enact or adopt budget amendments, how the county executive responds. So tonight is just the staff report. Our vote will be, if we agree, to adopt the staff report, but our budget vote to approve or reject the budget will not come until sometime in November. So I want to make that clear. I want to say just a couple of things. Number one, I want to commend our staff for the hard work that they did. So, I was at NIFA when it first was formed in the year 2000, and stayed on for about 7 years. And, I came back a year ago when most of the budget work has been done. So this is my second opportunity to review the work that the staff did. And I just think Evan, Martha, John, Carl, the Connell, the whole group did a terrific job. Kathy helped, and I'm going to thank you for that. Kathy's always in with a smile on her face. But I think the staff did a lot of work. I have to tell you that this is a tremendous effort. It is. It's a huge effort. And it's probably our most important overall responsibility that we have. And, you can argue with the conclusions, but you can't argue with the work that the staff put into it. And I witnessed it. I'm in the office a couple of days a week, and I saw all the work that they put into it. And it's one thing to read a report and, say, well, it's a good report. It's another thing to see the report coming together. So, and I'm sure the other directors agree with me, you guys did a great job.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would echo that. I mean, the staff they distill a multi-hundred-page budget into about 30 readable, logical, thoughtful, understandable pages, and it makes our work easier.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, no, they did. And I know Evan's not here, but, Evan, you did a fabulous job. And you did years ago, too, in the first go-around. I've just got a couple of points. I'm going to let Evan make the specific presentation. First of all, I think it's just also important to point to the directors that this is not a budget plan review for 2025. This is review of the multi-year plan that the county's put together, 2025 being the first year of the multi-year plan and the budget year. So I think that's an important point. I spoke to Chief Deputy County Executive a couple of times today. Just want to make this point. While I think there's no question the county's made some progress, and that should be noted, and I credit the county. They've done things sometimes on their own, sometimes after our recommendations and initiatives, and I give them credit for that. My basic concern, again, I'm not an accountant like Chris is or anything, but my basic concern is that this budget is not in compliance with the county charter or the NIFA statute that requires it to be in GAAP compliance and to follow GAAP principles. Right. And that concerns me. I think the language in the county charter that I've seen and the NIFA statute is very clear about requiring GAAP principles. And if you applied, and again, I'm not an expert on it, but as I understand it, if you applied GAAP principles to this budget, there would be a deficit. Now, that doesn't mean that the county doesn't have cash, and they've got a lot of the ARPA money in it. Doesn't mean that the county didn't put some money away in reserves for the future. All good stuff. But the bottom line is that the financial plan and the budget is not in compliance with GAAP in any way. And I think that's a significant failure on the part of the county and the budget. I think it's interesting also to point out that the county controller, Elaine Phillips, issued her own report, which I think, was relatively fair. We disagree with some of it, but if you read her report, she says the same thing that we do. If you read her report carefully, there are budget deficits outlined going forward. So even though she has made a number of comments, I'm not criticizing her for it, but about NIFA and whether or not we should continue a control period, her own numbers speak themselves to county numbers that are in deficit. And I think, when she made her presentation before the legislature, I watched the recording of it, I think she kind of hit it. But the bottom line is I'm not sure that her conclusions are any different than ours. I also think in reading the budget that I think there's a difference between fact and fiction. When you've got all these different risks that we list on I think table 1, there are a list of risks, whether it's fees, whether it's sales tax revenues and receipts, departmental spending, county debt, whatever it is, there are differences. And we're entitled to our opinion, and the county is entitled to their opinion. There's no question about it, and we can argue about it. I think that's a legitimate thing to argue. But the bottom line is that it's no fiction, the fact that the budget and the plan is not in compliance with GAAP, and that they've set aside $30 million a year that they've never done before, and puts the budget out of balance. Finally, I want to point out is that, there may be coming, based on our analysis, we'll see a demand or request that the NIFA board come out of a control period. I think that this plan and our staff report indicates the need to continue that control period well into the future. And I think that, again, just the fact that the county didn't use GAAP accounting methods, to me, indicates that things are not right. Even though, again, I always say, they've made some progress, and I give them credit for it. But you add on to that the $30 million number for the next 4 years that the county put in there. And the fact that you've got the hospital, and it's not just the $100 million or so of debt that the county has to back up, but a long-term liability. You've got the University Medical Center owing NISHIP almost $380 million. I just want you to repeat that. The hospital, NUMC, has fallen behind in their own health benefits by over or almost $380 million. And every month that they are due to make a $9 million payment, they make a $2 million payment. That means that every month the debt to NISHIP increases by $7 million, right? And that is a huge liability. Putting aside the issues of staffing, governance, management, the fact they're not putting money into the hospital and the infrastructure, whether or not they're paying all of their vendors, putting all of that aside, this hospital is in big trouble. And while you may say that, well, Nassau County is only responsible for paying back the debt if the hospital defaults on it, I don't look at it that way. And I think that there is tremendous exposure to the hospital and to the county if the hospital should go under in some way. By the way, I think I got to put it on the record, despite what the hospital is saying, the last thing that the governor and NIFA want to do is see that hospital close. It is a valuable resource for the county. It's a safety net hospital. We want to be able to service all those patients that need it. We all understand that. And anyone who says that the governor or NIFA wants to close that hospital is an absolute lie. And I will defend our position to the end. So based on all of this, I believe we should adopt the staff plan, and we'll have to wait and see what the legislature does with the budget. And with that, I'll hand it over to Evan to make a presentation, and then we can ask questions, and the board can comment.
Good.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Put my glasses on.
Okay, well, I apologize for not being able to appear in person tonight, but through the magic of technology, I think we can make this work. So staff reviewed the proposed multi-year plan for fiscal years 2025 through 28 and prepared a report of findings. Before I discuss the report, and by the way, thank you, Chairman Kessel and Chris Wright, for your kind comments, and everyone else who also agreed, praising staff. But I would also like to personally thank our staff for their professionalism and hard work that went into the preparation of the report. We do cover a lot of ground through a solid team effort. So I do concur with the board's sentiments. In any event, the report discusses in detail our assessment of the risks and concerns So unless there are specific questions about any of the individual items, I plan to limit my presentation to a higher level discussion of fiscal challenges confronting the county. Our general assessment of the county's finances is that the fiscal outlook in the major funds has improved compared to our previous analysis of the multi-year plan update, which we discussed in the staff report that we released in August. Unfortunately, we still find that many ongoing challenges to the county's fiscal health remain and must be addressed in the coming years. To start with, we find that 2024 will end in surplus, but only because of the one-shot infusion of unused funds the county received under the American Rescue Plan Act. This is noteworthy because the structural imbalance masked in 2024 by the ARPA funds that continues in each year of the proposed plan. And I say that because we didn't have to dig deep to see that the administration is proposing to use $30 million of fund balance in each year of the proposed plan to bridge the difference between its projections of operating revenues and expenditures. So what does this mean? It means that putting aside, as Chairman Kessel mentioned, putting aside any debate one may have regarding NIFA and the administration's differing assumptions, their reliance on fund balance demonstrates that the county's operating revenues are insufficient to pay for the county's operating expenditures. These are their numbers, not ours. To be clear, the variance between the county's revenues and expenditures is called a deficit under generally accepted accounting principles, which is commonly referred to by its acronym GAAP. I think it's important to point out or echo what has already been said, that the county controller and the Office of Legislative Budget Review each concur with this basic accounting principle. So one might ask, why is this a big deal? Well, putting aside budgeting best practices, the inclusion of fund balance as a funding source in the general fund and the police district fund would violate the legal requirements of the Nassau County Charter and the NIFA Act, that such funds must be balanced in the financial plan in accordance with GAAP. Now, overall, staff has identified several significant risks that, if not mitigated, would exacerbate the embedded GAAP deficits, causing them to increase multiple times above the 1% threshold, requiring a control period. We project potential GAAP deficits of between 189 million and 207 million in 2025, and greater amounts in the out years until reaching a high of between 333.8 million and 345.2 million in 2028. I want to note that the administration's projections in 2026, 27, and 28 do not account for any additional labor costs likely to result from new collective bargaining agreements for union contracts which expire June 30th, 2026. The additional labor costs will further widen the projected imbalance between recurring revenues and recurring expenditures. Now, excuse me, in an attempt to mollify our concerns, the county will likely point to the large reserves they have amassed in recent years, which currently stand at $522.1 million. This amount will likely be further augmented at year-end 24 by the one-shot infusion of unused funds received under the American Rescue Plan Act, as I mentioned earlier. To that point, we acknowledge that the county has done a good job at preserving most of the operating surpluses in recent years by prudently transferring the resources into these reserves, which can then be utilized as a fiscal tool to pay known long-term liabilities when they become due and payable, while relieving the major fund's operating budget of this burden. Consequently, we find while the proposed budget contains risks that, despite their size, may be manageable, but only because of the accumulated reserves. However, other risks that we discuss in this report raise doubt whether the county can navigate the long-term headwinds if the economy significantly declines, labor costs grow as we project, including spending on overtime and fringe benefits, and early intervention costs don't contract as expected by the administration. Further, we believe the reserves are insufficient to cover the entirety of the county's known risks and long-term liabilities, including the county's large liabilities for tax certiorari refunds, non-certiorari litigation, workers' compensation claims, and the county's contingent risk spending from the deteriorating finances of the Nassau Healthcare Corporation. Because of the concerns I summarized today and we described in greater detail in the staff report, we believe it may be difficult for the county to achieve recurring balance on a GAAP basis through 2028. Accordingly, we urge the county legislature to address these statutory deficiencies regarding fund balance and, at a minimum, bring the proposed plan into compliance with the aforementioned laws. NYFA staff and the directors will closely monitor the legislature's actions. I will close by saying that the multi-year plan in its adopted form will be considered by the NYFA director sometime in November, as Chairman Kessel mentioned, after the legislature has acted and any potential amendments have been incorporated. And that concludes my comments, but I certainly would entertain any questions.
Yeah, Evan, thank you very much again. Rory, and then Chris.
Evan, thank you, and thank you very much to the staff, in addition to the burden of producing this report in the short amount of time that you have. I've added to your burden by asking you lots of questions and meeting with you on numerous occasions, and I wouldn't understand this as well as I hope that I like to think that I do without your assistance. You know, I find this budget to be very troubling. For the reasons that Evan very diplomatically put it and as articulated in this report. It is fundamentally, structurally unbalanced. And there is a limit to how much we should be expected to tolerate the masking of that lack of balance by reliance on the county's reserves. I think the most important line or the most telling line in the report is one that Evan quoted. FY 2024 will end in surplus and not in deficit only because of the one-shot infusion of unused funds the county received under the American Rescue Plan Act. That is sort of the theme of this budget, that over the course of its multi-year plan, it relies on potentially draining over half of the county's existing reserves to make the math work. And that's not a way to run a budget or to have a multi-year plan. So I have a lot of concerns about this budget. There are particular shortcomings in its failure to comply with basic GAAP principles that I can't really understand why the county thinks that those things would possibly pass muster. But fundamentally, this budget and this multi-year plan portrays a lack of seriousness about addressing the county's fundamental financial issues. And, you know, with all the talk that we hear about whether or not NYFA still has a role, what else was NYFA created for except to ensure that the county's long-term health, financial health, is secure? So thank you very much for this report, for what it highlights, and it's certainly something that I hope the county will take seriously and the legislature will take seriously and produce a budget that we can put our stamp of approval on with a clean conscience. Thank you.
Thank you, Rory. Chris?
Mr. Chairman, and Evan, my question is mathematical. It's sort of a fact question. I think as the board knows and the interested public and the county officials here know, the imposition and continuation of a control period happens when we think there is going to be the actuality or the possibility of a deficit in excess of 1% in the major operating funds. As I read the budget, Evan, am I correct that that trigger number is about 1% of 3.6 billion or 36 million? Is it a little higher, a little lower than that?
Nope, that's correct.
Okay. And that $30 million right away is a problem from the use of the
It brings you right up to the cusp.
and
That's
you have
for
a number of, and we've been wrong and right on risk. I would also observe that in 17 years on NYFA and having seen a number of our assessments of budget outcomes, we've been, I mean the staff has been more right than wrong about what the real deficit was going to be at the end of a given year. And we can that's a provable fact. I would just.
And Chris,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I would just add the county controller, her office made an estimate, in addition to the 30 million, there's approximately $44 million of other gap adjustments.
So that's more than another 6, right? And so
Are estimated, yeah.
Right, so I guess just, Mr. Chairman, just to get that onto the record, right, as we consider requests for us to end a control period, assuming the hospital does not become an $84 million problem, which is also more than 36.
Right.
Right, just the existence right off the bat of a number that's already 80 to 90% of the total, without taking any other risks into consideration, makes it pretty hard for me to conclude other than that, the risk of a deficit is demonstrably higher when the people who are supposed to be managing it don't understand what could lead to a deficit.
Good point. Anyone else? Charo? John? Okay.
I'm sorry, I do have a question, but I don't want to.
No, go.
Okay. Can you just explain to us, the report highlights the lack of a budgeted contingency reserve. Can you just explain what that is and why that was important for you to flag?
Well, we think it's good budget, kind of best practice to have incorporate into the operating budget a dedicated line that would be either labeled specifically a contingency reserve that's there up front for the purpose to mitigate risks that may develop throughout a year, because it's very likely that the county, the best budget office in the world, maybe things break favorably and unfavorably against the budget lines throughout a year, and that by having a budgeted contingency, you're able to mitigate any mid-year disruption that would be caused by trying to offset those risks as they develop. So that's why it's concerning to us that the county, which had been including a contingency reserve, stripped it out in this multi-year plan.
So stated differently,
Thank you.
if something unexpected came up, there's no reserve to cover for it. It adds to the problem.
Right.
Thank you. Yes.
Just a quick, John, I'm sorry we didn't talk about this earlier in the day. What, if any, are the legal consequences of violating the county charter by not using GAAP? Or are there any?
I mean, we're not, there's no penalty within the law, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just that we would then be asked to approve a non-conforming budget
Right.
that was not legal. I wouldn't say illegal to make it sound criminal, but we would be in a position a month from now where we would be asked to approve a budget that doesn't comply with the law, which would be hard to do,
Correct.
maybe impossible to do.
Right. Okay, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, there is a resolution before us to adopt the staff report on the multi-year financial plan. Is there a motion to accept and adopt?
I move to accept it.
Okay, Rory, is there a second?
I'll do it.
Chris, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Great job, staff.
Yeah, great job, great job. All right,
Thank you.
Rory, you want to take the next resolution, please?
Sure, thank you. So, should I discuss it first or put it on the table? and then-
Let's put it on the table, then
Why don't
discuss
I'll
it.
move it so you can talk about it, and somebody else I'll move the item.
Sure, good.
You want a second?
Oh, you gotta move it. Oh,
I
did you move
moved
it?
it. I moved it,
It's
yeah.
been moved.
Yes,
I second it.
there you go.
Okay.
Go for it.
Thank you very much. This is a resolution which would direct the staff to prepare a request for proposals to audit and review the operations of the county attorney's office. The amount of money that the county attorney's office is spending, the county is spending on the use of outside counsel is simply extraordinary and needs to be examined. We've gone from an average of about $4+ million a year in outside counsel contracts to the last couple of years have been $8 or $9 million. This year, it's at $8 million, plus the county has appropriated another $6 million. So that's potentially $14 million spent in outside counsel services. That is an extraordinary sum of money, and it really raises questions as to the county's practices in how it is handling the legal matters that it needs to deal with. More than that, I think it raises questions about some of the choices that the county has made in terms of entering into litigation. As some of you might know, the county retained a law firm to bring a lawsuit challenging the state's new election law requiring counties like Nassau and towns to have their elections during even years. And that's a fair ground for arguing whether or not the state had the authority to impose that requirement. But it's certainly questionable whether or not Nassau County needed to file a lawsuit. There are currently 8 lawsuits pending challenging that law, including a lawsuit that was filed before Nassau County filed its own lawsuit. And it begs the question whether or not the county is really making fiscally sound and responsible decisions on its retention of outside counsel, on its use of sole source contracts to hire some of these outside counsel. And I think it'd be in the county's financial interests and all of our interests as taxpayers for there to be a hard look about how the county attorney's office is being run, and whether or not there might be a much more efficient way of dealing with the county's legal business than this 2- and 3-fold increase in the amount being spent on outside counsel services.
So just.
So, is there any other discussion?
No, I just want to ask, what are you proposing? Just
Oh,
put it on the
so
record.
yes, sorry. So the staff will prepare and issue an RFP, a request for proposals, for an outside professional organization to examine the county attorney's operations, its use and reliance on outside counsel, and report back to NIFA and to the county, and hopefully recommend some improvements on making that process and the county's use of how it defends itself in litigation, the kind of litigation that it engages in affirmatively, more efficient for taxpayers.
Mr. Chairman, I just have maybe council can clarify. I believe that this is wholly consistent with the NIFA statute, which authorizes NIFA to audit or cause audits to happen as we see fit pursuant to exercising our responsibilities. Is that
Yes,
correct?
we have, has the authority.
Statutory authority, right? So, thank you.
Are there any further comments or questions on behalf of the board? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The resolution carries. Carl, you want to come up for our cash and investment report as of September 30th?
Thank you and good evening. What you have before you are 2 reports as of September 30th. The first being the operating revenue and expenditures as of September 30th on a cash basis. If we look at our operating expenses for the 9 months ended, we're at 75.2% of the budgeted amount of $2,125,000. So we're right on track with that. And what we do also is we withhold money, just enough money to pay for those expenditures, with any excesses being remitted back to the county, passed back to the county. Are there any questions with regards to the expense, the revenue and expenditures? If not, we could turn to the next page, which is our investments as of September 30th. And what we do is the set-asides are primarily for investment in order to pay our debt, which will be due on November 15th, which will be both a principal and interest payment. We're invested in Treasury bills and Fannie Mae bills, which are both in conformity with our investment guidelines. The first items are going to mature on October 31st. which what we'll do is we'll invest on the short term for the 2-week period until November 15th, when everything is supposed to mature, and then our debt service payments are made. And once again, any excesses there will be remitted on to the Nassau County. Can I answer any questions with regard to the investments?
Any question on the part of the directors? Okay, thank you, Carl.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. I will now entertain a motion for the directors to conduct an executive session pursuant to Public Officers Law, Section 105, to consider the financial history of a particular corporation and certain matters related to proposed pending or current litigation. Do I have a motion?
Made.
Chris, I'll second it. All in favor? Aye.
Mr. Chairman, just as from an operational perspective, I understand we're trying to avoid you having to walk back and forth, so maybe what we do is we go to the other room for the executive session, but our adjournment might be a function of your absence, which would adjourn us automatically, or one of us coming in and suggesting that there's not 4 of us here.
Well, there will be 4.
But if there's not 4, then we don't have to bring you back here to
Right.
have an adjournment.
Or up to the board, we can have the executive session here and ask people to leave.
That's fair, too.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Can we turn mics off? But then we have to, problem is they have to adjourn on,
No, you guys can leave and come back, go into the next room, right?
okay. Is that fair?
I got a sports injury. I fell on acorns.
Yeah, you can all. Okay, at the request of the chairman, I'm reconvening the board from our executive session, during which no actions were taken, no decisions were made. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion?
It's been made and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Back from executive session?
Yeah, I did say that. Oh, have to move to come back? Okay, would somebody like to move to come back from executive session? Made, seconded?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. That passes with four votes. Would somebody like to move to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Made. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.